This is what's been missing from our investigation of UFOs and aliens. The majority of UFOs are either objects of light or clusters of lights, and that they manifest on the spot. They essentially are super intelligences, well beyond anything that we could really even conceive of today, but that they are there and that they may well have been helping with human progress.
I'm 𝗪𝗓𝗦𝗬𝗧, your conscious investigative reporter, and this production is in affiliation with Zohar Entertainment and Gaia. Andrew Collins, it is a privilege and an honor to interview you today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So your new book, Origins of the Gods, is complete with a foreword from the legendary 𝗪𝗘𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘. And in this book, you take the ancient alien astronauts theory to a whole new level, and you refer to them as transdimensional beings. Can you explain to me the word transdimensional?
Transdimensional refers to the ability of intelligences, consciousness, or individual beings to be able to cross from a higher dimensional state into the three-dimensional realm of space and one dimension of time that we live in today. And there is evidence from a string theory, particularly an area of string theory known as M theory, that suggests that our whole universe actually floats within a higher dimensional realm that's referred to as the bulk. And this is 11 dimensions in total, and that we float within that, and that our universe is just one of many of these, what they refer to as brains or brain worlds, each of which have their own laws of physics. And obviously we have our own laws, which clearly science has investigated and is aware of, but others coexist with us that can occasionally either buck up against ours, possibly allowing communication to take place. But also there is a possibility that these other brain worlds, these other existences, these other universes can actually overlay our own at certain times, and that when this does, there is a bleed through from one to the other, and this could very easily help to explain the presence within our midst of everything from UFO intelligences, structured craft, but also things like cryptids that appear at certain locations around the globe as if they turn up out of nowhere and are around for a period of time, probably a few weeks, and then just vanish back to where they seem to have come from originally. Some, of course, obviously only present for a much shorter period of time. So we can start to look at all of this phenomena as part of one bigger picture. And I think this is what's been missing from our investigation of UFOs and aliens. We've just assumed that UFOs are objects that come down here from another planet or another star system, and do their thing, and then off they go back to that particular star system. But it's a fact that the majority of UFOs are either objects of light or clusters of lights, and that they manifest on the spot. Then they might move around, but then they'll boom, disappear again. That's the majority of UFO sightings. And I think we need to start looking at other possibilities as well as the concept of physical aliens coming down here. We need to be looking at the possibility there's something else going on around us. And I think that the answer is that there are beings who inhabit this 11-dimensional space that's around us that have the ability to be able to connect with us and to manifest in our space-time at will, quite literally, and that they are omnipotent, they are omnipresent, and they essentially are super intelligences, well beyond anything that we could really even conceive of today, but that they are there and that they may well have been helping with human progress since the beginning. And I mean the beginning. In Africa, as much as 1.5 million years ago, that they've always been with us, they've always been around us. But because they are multidimensional in nature, it's difficult for us to look at them straight on, because we're three-dimensional creatures. That means we can only ever perceive a three-dimensional realm. If they are four-dimensional or multidimensional, we can't see them. We can only get an idea of what might be present there. And we have to interpret that in terms of religion, of cultural upbringing, different traditions. And I think sometimes we get that wrong. In the past, we've seen these entities as devils, as demons, of angels. And of course, in the modern day, we look at them purely in terms of extraterrestrials, you know, like little green men or greys or big Nordics or whatever else it is. But I think that a lot of this imagery is created by ourselves. It's part of the interaction between us and this phenomena, and that a lot of it is the product of what we think we are seeing, what we think we are experiencing. But that these intelligences, if they are multidimensional in nature or transdimensional, as a term I use, then we don't stand a hope of actually seeing them full on. We cannot do it. You know, there are such beings as known as the shadow people. I mean, many people have seen them. They just seem to appear in a room, flit around, and then they disappear out. And it's possible that what people are seeing are these transdimensional beings at this time, that they may well be part of this phenomena. And we just need to be aware of this. So on the one hand, we may have physical aliens, physical spacecraft, and on the other, we could be dealing with an all-encompassing phenomena that is transdimensional in nature.
And one of the primary intentions of the Awakening UFO and Conscious Life Expo is to really look at the common threads between the cryptids, the supernatural, the paranormal, and ufology, and then, of course, metaphysics, the mechanics of creation, and spirituality.
Absolutely.
So we're bringing together lots of different worlds, aren't we? And I'm wondering, what is the role of consciousness, particularly the consciousness of humanity, in this entire picture?
I think that consciousness is crucial to understanding our relationship, not just with the phenomena, but the intelligences behind it. Within physics, there is something referred to as the observer principle, or the observer effect. And what this is that if we observe experiments that are going on within a subatomic level, that we have an impact upon the result. And that, I believe, is something which can be carried to the macrocosm in the phenomena, the objects that we see, the UFOs, the beings, the light beings that we encounter, that our involvement in their presence can change what is actually going on. That's not to say that this phenomena is not present on its own, but that human consciousness interaction, as we refer to it, is perhaps 50% of everything that goes on. Take us out the picture, I think phenomena would still happen, because I mean there are some incredible pictures coming out of Mars, for instance, that show these lights that are appearing. I mean, they're very objective. They're probably made of plasma, full state of matter, which I believe is very important to all of this. But if you place us on Mars and observe what was going on, I think that the phenomena would manifest more obviously as beings and craft and whatever, in the same way that it does down here on Earth. In other words, we have an integral part in creating and manifesting that phenomena. That's not that it's not real, but that just we give it a helping hand to manifest in a way that we can accept and understand.
Andrew, I'm finding it's necessary to define the word real. What is real?
Well, that's a very good point. And I mean, when we talk in terms of phenomena, we're talking about something which we don't properly understand. And this is the big issue with dealing with multidimensional environments. We don't really understand it. We don't really understand the quantum world, the subatomic world that coexists with us all the time. And physicists will openly stand up and say, look, if you think that you understand the quantum world, you've got it wrong, because we are still learning all of the time. But I think that we can get a handle on what's going on. And for the first time, I think that we're beginning to realize that UFOs, paranormal activity, cryptids, and other unusual activity are all part of a bigger whole, something that coexists with us, something that's been around not just for the last 70 odd years since the beginning of the flying saucer craze, but has been with us since the beginning. I mean, as I said, right the way to the birth of humanity in Africa as much as 1.5 million years ago.
Do you believe that whole is greater than the sum of its parts?
Do I believe that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts? Well, all I know is that the intelligences that are behind this phenomena are so far advanced that in many ways the phenomena that they can produce is almost like them controlling puppets in a way. And I think that in many ways they can also manipulate us. They can affect our minds through telepathy. They can affect us through mind over matter. They can instill in us a connection with them, one that many people, after they've had UFO encounters, will retain for the rest of their life. And one of the reasons why they're able to do this is that they're beyond time. In our realm, our 3 dimensions of space and one of time, time only moves forward, or we see it as only moving forward. But in a multidimensional realm, time essentially doesn't exist. And because of that, the past still exists today. Activities that may have gone on in prehistoric times, shamanism, the building of stone circles, and other types of monument, they're still taking place because that time doesn't exist. It's not something that went on in the past. It's still going on now, just in the same way that this interview is occurring now and will always occur for the rest of the universe. This particular moment will continue on, so that has an impact not only in what's happening in the here and now, but forever. In other words, when you go to certain locations which we deem portals or vortex sites, or window areas as they used to be called in the past, where lights and other paranormal activity take place, you often find that there are prehistoric sites associated with them, like standing stones or stone circles or earthen mounds, things like this, which shows that the ancients were aware of these sites and did their rituals there, often involving shamanism, the wearing of animal paraphernalia to take the form of that animal to enter into otherworldly realms and to communicate with otherworldly intelligences. Now, we may think that took place thousands of years ago, but no, it's still taking place now and can still affect what we see at the same location today. In fact, in many ways, it's forged what we see today and will always forge what it is. And if we go to those sites and we do meditations, we do rituals of any description, that's going to impact on that site forever. Because in a way, that ritual that you do at that site continues to take place. It's always taking place. Nothing is ever forgotten.
That's fascinating, and it suggests that perhaps there is a form of Akashic records that is recording everything. Is that potentially related to black holes, the Milky Way, or some other aspect of the cosmos?
Well, you talk in terms of the Akashic records. What are the Akashic records? Well, this was something that was heavily promoted by the American psychic named Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet. And he saw it as almost like this library on the astral that you could literally pull books from and open up and download that information. And that's actually how he perceived it when he would go off into his sleep states and receive information. But I think that it's more fundamental than that. I think that we can see it in terms of the entanglement of all. And what I mean by that is that we have this concept known as quantum entanglement. Entanglement means that particles can become twinned. They can, quite literally become twins, and no matter how far away they get from each other, they will still retain an instantaneous contact and link between each other. So what that actually means, that if you tweak one, the other one will always move in an equal and opposite direction, no matter how far away it gets. And that's one particle. If we can think of countless particles creating what we call entangled states, it starts to explain everything from telepathy to mind over matter to even to precognition. And those entangled states are in my head, they're equal and opposite parts could be in your head or anybody else's head. And so we are able to transfer information. In other words, if those particles in my head are doing a particular dance, that means they're also doing that same dance in your head. And that would be the conveyance of information and energy. And that's what we call telepathy or mind over matter. And now, if you then transfer that to the macrocosm, the greater world or the greater universe in which we live, it's now believed that entangled systems of particles could be behind what we term black holes. Now, it could be the mouths of black holes, which are also known in science as Einstein-Rosen bridges. These are also more commonly known today as wormholes, that wormholes may exist through entangled systems of particles. In other words, you've got some on one side, and because they're entangled with those somewhere else, you have this instant transfer of information and mass and energy going from one to the other, and that this could be the explanation for all of this phenomena, and as well as that also what's known as white holes. White holes are the opposite to black holes. Black holes, to put it simply, suck in energy and mass and information, whereas white holes spew it out, and they spew it out as what's known as plasma. And plasma is something which is integral to understanding multidimensional environments, entangled systems, and the creation of what we call atomic matter. In other words, everything around us in the physical world in which we live. And although all of this together, you think, well, how does it all come together? It's actually pretty easy to understand. And once you do start factoring all these things together, entanglement, plasma, multidimensional environments, and the idea that there are other consciousness, other intelligences, other beings involved here, then it starts to give us solutions to this phenomena which has so dogged humanity since the beginning, and I think may well be responsible for the creation of religions and other traditions and mythologies around the world. Indeed, as I say in the book, the origins of the gods themselves.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to watch the next video on AwakenZone. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, but you won't want to miss what's coming next.